everyone. My name is Maddie Rathkamp. I'm the Development Associate over here at Columbus Citizens Foundation. I'm joined today by Colette Chiodi. We're so excited to have her. She's a former scholarship recipient and has been very impactful in Columbus Citizens Foundation ever since. So we're so excited to have her. Thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your career,
Thank you, Maddie.
and how you got to where you are and kind of college and beyond. So if you don't mind giving us kind of a brief, I know there's probably a lot of accomplishments you've had, but just kind of a brief introduction to your career and how you got into marketing and what that looked like, that would be great.
Great, thank you, Maddie. So, I been working in marketing. I wasn't always planning on working in marketing. Since as long as I remember, I wanted to pursue a career in legal. I wanted to be a lawyer, particularly a trial lawyer. I really found it interesting, the whole logical reasoning, putting together arguments, poking holes in arguments, debating. So that was always my intention. I went to Bishop Kearney High School in Brooklyn, New York. After Bishop Kearney, I went to NYU. I never really considered other careers other than legal. So when I, attended NYU, my major was political science because that has all of the foundation to a career in legal political theory, logical reasoning, and all of that good stuff. So that was my major. Really enjoyed my classes there. I definitely learned a lot that would be used outside of being a lawyer or a career in legal, just like basic life skills in terms of like putting together arguments and just critical thinking and communication skills. While I was there, as part of my major, I took a class, it was called Media and Politics, which I never really thought much about media. I know media is such a broad term, but this class was focused on how media really influences the political narrative, which I feel like that's a very hot topic nowadays anyway. But, back in 2002, when I started college, I found it very interesting. So that kind of led me to take more media classes, took quite a few credits in media, and then just that turned into a minor in journalism and mass communication. While I was in college, prepared for my LSAT, was ready to go, to law school, and then towards my, my end of my senior year, I was like, I think before I start applying, I really want to get some practical application, and I decided to take a year off, and I became a paralegal in a law firm. It was a medical malpractice law firm in the city. And I really just wanted to make sure that this was for me, because law school is a big time commitment and money commitment. And I unfortunately did not have any internships while I was in college. I just couldn't take anything that was unpaid. So, I was working while I was in school, and anything that I did outside of school, I really needed it. It needed to be either a paid internship or, a job. So I graduated college in May of 2006. In June, I started at a law firm as a paralegal. I would say that summer, there was a lot of, soul searching. And I realized that it really wasn't for me, which was hard to admit to myself. Definitely hard to admit to my parents. And, for years, all I talked about was I wanted to be a lawyer. That was it. Never considered anything else. And it was scary. It was definitely scary to come to that realization and not really know what the backup is. I didn't really have a backup plan. And I mean, looking back, it's almost silly to talk like that because you're like 22 and you have your whole life ahead of you. And, but in the time it was really daunting, and it was quickly of what am I going to do, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I still loved like the core tenets of, political science and the reasoning and the communication skills and all that good stuff. But I didn't know how I was going to apply that into like real life and make money. So, I really thought back to what I enjoyed from my studies at NYU. And it was as simple as I went on Indeed and I looked for jobs that had descriptions in terms of what it is that I like to do. So I was focused on media jobs, which again, media is just a very broad category, right? So you could be a journalist, you could be a producer, you could work in marketing. And so I focused on skills that I knew that I was good at and I enjoyed. And I came across a job for media planning and strategy, which at the time I wasn't 100% clear on what it was, but I liked how it was described as putting together, marketing recommendations for clients, analyzing their targets, putting together, market analysis, competitive assessments, all of that stuff. So managing budget. So it's stuff that, I thought I could be good at. And I applied for the job. I went for the interview. I was completely upfront with them and told them my path and said that this was not a field that I had considered before, but I think I would be really good at it and I wanted to give it a shot. And that's really how I landed my first job in marketing and media planning and strategy. So it took a while for me to get there. I think once I was there, it was kind of like, okay, now let's see if this is really what I thought it would be. And I loved it from the beginning. And it was, overseeing, it's funny, I'll give you an example of, I remember when I first started, my boss at the time, who was amazing, she was like, a lot of people are going to ask you what you do. And you're going to say, do you watch TV? And everyone's going to say yes. And do you see commercials? And everyone's going to say yes. And they're going to say, well, I didn't create that commercial, but I figured out where that commercial should be placed and by who it should be seen and who is going to buy the product, and that person who buys the product, what magazines they read, what websites they go on, and then that's what I do. And I was like, okay. So I was like, all right, at Christmas, when my family asks, where are you working? Oh, what do you do? This is what I'll tell them. So at the time, everyone wanted to be in digital. But I think everyone was still kind of figuring out how to do it. And, it was kind of a little bit like the Wild West back then, and how to monetize it, how to report on it, how to determine success. So it was an interesting time to start my career because it was, we were all kind of trying to figure it out, and they had, digital specialists that kind of really owned it, and you were involved, but you were tangentially involved, where nowadays, like, everyone is ingrained in it and it's just part of everyone's job. From there, I spent quite a few years at the same agency. I worked on numerous accounts, entertainment, hospitality, travel, packaged goods, and which is also another part of marketing that I love. And especially working in an agency is you just work on a whole breadth of categories, and every category is very different in terms of how you approach it and how you plan and how you report and just, your experience. So it was like I could work on at one time 3 different clients and have 3 totally different experiences. And it really pushes you to just work hard and get to know each category, and just it's just great experience. So I definitely recommend, if working marketing, like if you could start off in an agency and really just get as much experience on different categories, different media, traditional media, digital media, analytics, and just touch all of it and really see what it is that you enjoy. I really think that I had such success because I went the agency route, and that's really where I, honed in on my skills. So I was, with the same agency for a while. I had switched to another agency to work on a different client, was there for a bit, went back to my original agency, and then started working in pharmaceutical, honestly by chance. And it was very different than other categories that I had previously worked in, because pharmaceuticals, they haven't always been consumer-facing products. So it's typically, marketing to physicians and having physicians write out prescriptions to patients, and patients not really, having the education and the knowledge to ask for different pharmaceutical products versus another. So it was kind of, it was interesting to see now how the category was changing, and consumers were at the forefront of pharma. and, empowering them to speak to their physicians for a certain medication or what their conditions are, or educate them on conditions. I mean, I learned about so many different conditions. I think after my first year doing it, I thought I was a doctor myself. So, and I moved to another agency and I worked on Pfizer for many years, and super smart clients, great clients, worked on quite a few different pharmaceutical brands within Pfizer. Did that for a number of years. And then from there, I decided I wanted some experience in operations. So we were starting to build out an operations team, which we didn't have previously. So I moved from the strategy team over to the operations team and was one of the first people in my group to be on that team. They were building out that team. So they were, looking for people who had experience on the account and then also operations experience. So we kind of started that team from scratch, which was nice to be part of the team that, was building everything from the ground up. I found that fascinating. I loved it. And then I did that for a couple of years. I had, taking a step back, during that time I had got married, I had my first daughter. When I had my first daughter, that's when I transitioned into the operations team. I wanted a new experience. And then when I had my second child, I decided to take a step back in my career and just take a pause. And I decided to stay home with my children. My mom also was diagnosed with some health issues at the time. So I really felt like between my mom and my children, I kind of wanted to shift my focus there. So I did. So that was a couple of years ago, since I had my third child. So it's been pretty busy. But that's basically been the path. It was not a linear path, which I think nothing in life really is. It definitely took some time to figure out what it is that I really wanted to do. And I think, it could be scary when you realize that something you always thought you wanted to do may not be actually what you're intended to do in life. And I think, when you graduate college, there's so much pressure to, okay, now go join the workforce and know what you want to do the rest of your life and work the next, 40 years and just keep going. And I think it's hard to come to that realization that, there might be points in your life where you have to make some major choices and kind of shift what you were previously doing.
You spoke about going into or working with your firm and how you were going through the digital age. There was a lot of change. There was a lot of new things on the horizon, things up and coming. What advice would you give to a student that's going through a lot of change around us and just trying to stay motivated? And as you said, there were digital professionals at that time. What advice would you give for someone to maintain resilience?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, what I've learned in my 38 years here is life is all about adapting, and it's just going through a series of changes, and you just have to be able to adapt and go with it. Because everyone is going through, evolutions and changing. I'm speaking about my industry, but I know every industry at some point there are major, changes that you have to just roll with and learn. I think when I started off in the digital space, I think we were all trying to figure out how to navigate it. And, in one way it was easier because we were kind of setting the precedent for, how to plan, how to report, what was considered success. We were really all kind of writing the story ourselves, which was nice. But it's also, scary too, because you don't really have benchmarks or things to compare it against that you do in other, media channels that have been around and planned for much longer than that. So, I think I try to just take in as much as I can from people that I worked with. And I really, and again, I didn't have a marketing background, so this was all new to me in a way. I mean, digital was definitely new, but for me, everything was kind of new. So, just, I would say, learn from the people that you work with, find people that you work with that could be mentors. I mean, my first boss to this day, I think she was amazing. And I really think that my love for the industry and my success was partly due to just having such an amazing mentor, and who kind of took me under her wing, and just, I absorbed everything from her. And, just observe the people that you work with and learn from them, and, grow with them, and, just be ready to adapt. And there's always going to be changes. I mean, like to your point, when I started, it was digital, and then I went into pharma, and a lot of, the perception of pharmaceutical marketing was changing, and, how you market to consumers, where previously you didn't, necessarily do that. And there's still, it's still changing as we speak, in terms of like how you can market to consumers and what messages you can convey, how you can reach them. That is, as I was working on it, we were constantly getting updates, especially in the digital space, with how digitally you could market to consumers through pharma. So just learn from your peers and just be okay with change. And, I think it's hard because a lot of people don't like change because it makes things harder, right? Like, it's easy to just keep doing the status quo, and this is how things have been done. So, so that's it. I don't think you really reach success by doing it like that. I think you always need to kind of think ahead to like what's next and how you can make things better. So, things are constantly going to be changing in your career, whether it's your industry or just your own personal growth. And you just have to get comfortable with it.
Knowing what you know now, though, as a marketing professional, do you have any standout advice you would give to students who are looking to market themselves as they start job hunting and or applying for internships? Or what advice would you give to market yourself? I guess it's kind of a broad question, but
no, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, so when I made, had the epiphany that I didn't want to go to law school and what was I going to do next, I was very nervous about how I was going to appear to, potential employers, and did I have the right experience, or will I never be able to get a job because I was, I had in my mind that I was going to go to law school and I know how to, I can't do anything else, right? And I think looking back, that was such a silly way of thinking, because anything you've learned in your life is experience and can be used and is applicable in so many different ways. So, when I got to the point in my career when I was interviewing, candidates to come work at my agency, some of them had marketing degrees and some of them didn't, and I never faulted anyone for not, having studied marketing in college, or, who had English degrees, or, or math or stats, whatever it was. And because you could have a wide range of experiences, and there are things that you will take from your experiences or from classes that you've had, or that are applicable to so many different careers or jobs, or just in life in general. So don't discredit any of your experiences or anything that you've done, and just really, use those to your advantage. And if there's something, like if there's something in the job that you're going for, try to find out as much of what, is in that job description, and then pull out something that you did maybe in a previous job or an internship or in a class that could be applicable to what it is that they're looking for. For instance, when I went for my first job interview for, media planning and strategy, I was very upfront to what I thought my career path was going to be, and I was honest. And one of the responsibilities in that job was managing client budgets. And I had worked at NYU in their Office of Student Activities, and I managed all our different organizations, teams, sports, their budgets. So I was like, well, okay, that maybe not have been something I studied in college, but I did that. So I have experience managing budgets and, the accountability. So I spoke a lot about that. And so I think it's just trying to find ways that, you could identify with the interviewer, the job description or something, because, just because it may not be exactly what you thought you were going to be, it doesn't mean that you have no experience that could be applicable to whatever it is you're pursuing now.
So now transitioning into this next phase of life that you're in, how has working and taking a pause in your career to be home with your children, how has that affected you?
Yeah, I mean, I think making the decision to, take a pause and focus on my family was probably the hardest career decision I made. Definitely harder than, transitioning from, thinking that I'm going to go to law school to working in marketing. It was a decision that, me and my husband, my family, we made together. I was fortunate that I had the opportunity to be able to make that decision. And, it was tough. I mean, for many, many years, I identified myself as, a certain person. And I, worked super hard in my career. I worked a lot. When you work in an advertising agency in Manhattan, your nights, your weekends is, not always yours. So I dedicated my life to being a certain, just being a certain way. And I worked a lot. I worked really hard, and that's who I was. So, when I became a mother, with my first daughter, I went back and I, continued doing what I was doing. And then there came a point in time when, we were having our second child and my mother became ill, that I decided I really wanted to shift my focus. But it was definitely a tough decision to make. And even though in my mind I knew that it was going to be for a moment in time, it was definitely hard. And I think also there is definitely a stigma around women leaving the workforce and being home with their children. And it's I think it is a positive experience. I mean, I always say my kids are only little for so long, so I'm fortunate that I can be there pretty much every day with them. But I know there definitely is some kind of negativity to it. And, at the beginning, I was a little bit self-conscious of it, when people would ask what you do, and, you kind of feel like you have to explain, well, I worked in marketing and now I'm home with, and it took a bit for me to, talking before about how do you adapt to change. And this was a tough one to adapt to, as happy as I was that I was able to experience those moments and be in the moment with my children. It definitely took a while for me to be comfortable with it and, proud of it almost. So to answer your question, I mean, it definitely feels like a different life stage. And, I am able to focus on, things that I also enjoy personally. I think that it takes a while for a mother too to realize what it is she likes to do for herself, because everything, especially when you're a stay-at-home mom, everything is about your kids, everything is about your family, and what it is that you as a person, as an individual, like to do. I shifted focus there, and that I find very fulfilling. So I'm happy that I'm able to do that. But like anything else in life, it's just, you're on to the next phase, and what is it that you can get out of this phase, and what is your focus going to be? And I think, you really just need to figure out what makes you happy, whether that's personally or professionally. And I think, there are these points in time where, going back to how I started my career, I realized that becoming a lawyer would not have made me happy, right? So it's like, okay, so now what will make me happy? And then, you're kind of on to the next thing, like what will continue, that happiness path for you. And, I felt like I was at a point in time where shifting my focus to being with my children would make me happy. And that was okay. And I think it took a bit of time for me to realize that that was okay, and to not have to explain that that was okay or to justify it, where I feel like I'm probably in a good place with it now. But it was definitely a tough transition at the beginning.
It's great to hear how you've been so successful throughout your career and have had such a good work-life balance, and now ending up where you are today. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It was great to hear your story and hear what makes you you, and just, get some advice that we can all take and learn from. So we appreciate you being here, appreciate all your help, and thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.